Hanover and whether or not we're going to have the capacity and so forth going forward for the water as well as the water quality in Hanover, especially in lieu of all the building that's going on. One of the things I would notice, though, in the summary of the memorandum that came out with the notes for tonight's meeting was it says the drought contingency plan will take between 6 to 8 months to complete. If it's going to take it for the anticipated span, during that time, is there going to be a moratorium on the add-ons for water connections or for building in the area so that we get an accurate up-to-date of what's going on of what we currently have? Or is there going to be contingencies as for add-ons to be added, and then that's added to the study that's being done? Just curious how that's going to all work with regards to that, as far as that contingency plan, so that we can get accurate, updated statistics for that and make sure that we have going forward what's best for all of Hanover.
Manager Lewis, would you care to address that, or would you care to defer until we're into the study?
I would like to defer until we're in the study, if you're all right with that.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. It was just after reading the notes, I just, I highlighted that, and since, it's something that if it's going to be done correctly, we want it to, cover all the bases.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're looking at all the factors and the variables that could contribute to
Certainly.
what's going on, especially since we are in a drought condition. And one point of clarification, just for my own understanding, I understand that we support York Water Company if they kind of run out of water, and they support us if we run out of water. Is that my understanding? Because I guess there was some confusion on Friday when York Water Company put out a mandatory water restriction. Does that in fact apply to Hanover, or because of the backup, or is that just for their certain areas that they cover?
Just York Water. Do you want to add anything, Eric?
Yeah, I would just offer that we do have an interconnect between the York County system and the York Water system and our system. It is not intended to be an equalization thing where if they need water, they just open up the valve. It is meant for dire conditions where we have that capability, we have that permitted through the state, and it can go either way. It could benefit us, it could benefit them.
Okay.
At this point in time, that valve is closed.
Okay.
And certainly as they're having this discussion, I don't know that we're intending to open the valve up and begin to serve them. That's not our intent.
And has been closed for many years.
It has been. It's been opened on a couple occasions, but nothing recent.
Okay, because there wasn't anything out on the regular news and so forth, and then some people were saying, well, this township got taken off, but this one got added, and this one back and forth. So there was a lot of confusion, and I know there's some confusion in our area whether or not there were water restrictions. And for someone that takes care of a garden and flowers regularly, I haven't watered in the last several days, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't violating any procedures or, impacting negatively on our water resources.
Yeah, the only thing that we've done is ask for, as people are interested in helping to conserve, be cognizant of the fact that we are in a drought, and, so that's all we've done is just ask.
Okay, are we gonna actually or limit the amount of car washes that come to Hanover, since now we have even
No, we
another
can't
one?
have enough of those.
I know, we have another one coming up on Eisenhower, so, just to know, thanks.
Ari, can I ask a question, please? She brought something up, that we do have a type of agreement with York, but when we're both communities or areas are in a drought, it would be impossible for us to honor, water from our area if we're in a drought, the same as with them, correct?
This would certainly be a leadership decision for you guys, but mine, from an operational standpoint, is we would likely not provide water to another community at the expense of our community. We would serve the needs of our community first and foremost. If we had the ability to serve additionally beyond that, then we would entertain that, but that would be a decision that would fall to leadership, not to engineering.
And that should be basically the same either way, York or Hanover, correct?
I would believe so, but I don't know their
Right.
policies intimately.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So public comment for anyone online. Would you gentlemen manage that, please?
If you're joining us online, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to address council.
Single file, no pushing.
We're good.
Not so much. Okay. Then public comment is now closed. That brings us to item 3, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Excuse-
To approve the
Can
consent
I have a
agenda.
motion to approve the entire consent agenda, item 3A through N?
Barb did.
Barb?
I'll second it.
And second? All right. Any discussion? All right. Those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 4, Finance, Personnel, Administration, the 2024 Budget Executive Summary. Jim, welcome to the fire. Are we going to project that, or how are we going to do it? Not sure what's going on.
Do you have it, Jim? John, can you help?
It's already up on the screen here.
Well, yeah, but we wanted it
We
bigger.
could display it where we maybe
If you
could see
could.
it.
Eric, did you?
Yeah, I have it set up, I don't have the presentation itself. Is it?
Obviously, we're not in the varsity AV club.
Well,
Right. Without a doubt.
yes, I talked to her yesterday. She said she's still writing thank yous. Very appreciative.
You got it, Mark?
Yeah, I did see something that Eric and he said he was giving me some insight. I told Mark about it.
It takes like a minute. Oh, I can fall asleep.
There you go.
It's 2 words.
He said that Kinsley needed, and if Kinsley owns it, he knows them guys, and he can find out what's going on. If it's not Kinsley, then it's a little bit harder to figure it out. From what he hears, Kinsley owns it. It should be a no-brainer.
First slide. So tonight, kick off our 2024 budget process. Tonight, I'm going to present just a high-level review, preparation of our workshop that we'll have on September 26th with the council. At that time, all of the department directors will be also presenting, discussing their operations and their capital spending. It will be based off of currently the baseline budget which I'm presenting tonight. Again, this budget is proposed by borough management. It hasn't gone through any further review with the council, obviously. Non-compensation expenses we're estimated at a 3% growth for next year. Obviously, the rates could change. Right now, with this budget, we have not included any type of increases of borough levied taxes or service fees. Our 2023 forecast is only through August of this year, and the actual full real results, as you know, can change. One of the things I want to point out tonight is we're going to have show an operating and capital fund 5-year forecast. I know the budgeting process a lot of times is focused on the next year's budget, but we really need to be looking down the road because some of the decisions we make in a current fiscal year affect further years. We did look at our expenditures for next year, and we really tried to minimize our expenses to ensure that we have proper reserves. The GFOA recommends at least a 2-month reserve for operating expenses. I'm building in a 3-month minimum reserve for operating expenses, but again, just have a more conservative approach. Would like to focus going forward on building up our capital funds and reserves, and plan for capital expenditures. We do, obviously, with very large projects like the Shepherd Myers Dam, we borrow debt for that. But when we purchase large equipment or large vehicles, we've been financing recently for those purchases, 5-year leases, and the interest rates are very high. In fact, we have one vehicle that's specialized equipment that's proposed. It's a sewer jet vac. It's about a $524,000 piece of equipment. And if we were to finance that over 5 years, we'd have another $83,000 worth of interest expense. We could use $83,000 elsewhere. And so planning and saving more is something that really needs to be thought through. I'm going to talk a little bit about our general obligation debt as well, too. We've had we're carrying about $45 million worth of long-term debt right now. That takes us out through 2038, I believe. We're going to be borrowing for any renovations or new building for our borough buildings. That'll be probably another $12 million, so we will be carrying some pretty heavy debt. And so, again, we need to take that into consideration when we're planning our operating budgets going forward. I do want the council to consider looking at certain fees. In-borough water fees have not been changed for 10 years. In-borough sewer fees haven't been changed for over 10 years. Our refuge fees, I think, were lowered when we actually had the stormwater fee come out. I think that was a concession that was made. And then as far as the any tax levy, we did increase our real estate millage rate last year, for this year from 5.65 to 6.09. And I know there was some discussion about possibly phasing in additional millage rate to get up that full mill rate over the next couple of years. So it's something maybe we should consider for next year's budget and beyond. And one thing separate from the budget for next year, I am requesting the council to approve a temporary loan to the water fund to meet their debt obligations. We're running into some cash constraints as we go towards the end of the fiscal year, and that would be on for a vote at the council meeting next week.
It'd be like a loan against receivables.
This is a loan to pay the long-term debt. That's the principal and interest that's due October 1st.
But it would be against future receivables they have.
Correct. And it's a temporary loan. It's not a permanent loan.
Right.
And the water fund being the largest enterprise fund that we have, as excess cashes, we'll be paying back the general fund. So it's slated to be a short term.
Yeah, do you prefer questions at the end or wait till the 26th?
Tonight I just want to really hit summary.
That's
I wanna
why I'm
get some-
asking.
Yeah, I want to get some concepts across to everybody. The 26th we'll have a full day. In fact, you're going to be getting a 54-page presentation from me for you to take home this weekend to study. So there'll be plenty of time for detailed questions. So tonight I just really want to talk about some high-level
Then I'll
concepts.
hold my tongue.
Okay?
We'll deliver that packet to you all on Friday, so you have the weekend to review it.
Oh, thanks.
No problem.
I was wondering what I was going to do this weekend.
Some of this might be a repeat for some, but I thought it'd be worthwhile to go through this. I do have a pointer here somewhere. I could use the pointer, but of course what I did with it anyway. So the general fund and all of our enterprise funds, we have split into an operating fund and a capital projects fund. And if you think about the capital project fund, think of that as sort of a piggyback or savings for the future. We keep the amount of money we need in the operating fund to meet our normal obligations, and then we can transfer the funds to the capital projects funds for our debt, our capital outlays, and any type of, long-term obligations, saving up for different projects. I want you to look at the highlights. The highlights are really what our reserves are. So the general fund, operating fund is at, we're anticipating will end up at under $12.8 million. The capital projects reserve will be at 4.9, so we should end up at a 17.7 consolidated reserve at the end of this year. Now, we do benefit, part of that is from the ARPA, which I have the arrows there. So $3.9 million of the $7.3 million of ARPA funds that we received from the federal government will be transferred to the general fund this year, and that's to offset our police and fire wages and compensation, and which is one of the proper uses of the ARPA funds that's permitted. And so we'll transfer that into the general fund, and then we'll turn around and transfer it down to the capital fund for safekeeping. One of the things that we wanted to save the ARPA funds for, as they turn into general reserves, is for our future building projects. Also, if you look at the line items, we start with our beginning cash investments, and the next line is our revenues. You can see our revenues for 23 in the general fund is about $18 million. A lot of it, some of that's also from the ARPA, so it's a little bit inflated. But if you look across for 24 through 28, you can see our revenues are pretty flat. Right now, we don't have any plans for any increases in fees. And you can see our expenses, of course, are increasing. So from year 25 through 28, we're basically running an operating deficit for revenues and expenses. Not a good thing. Obviously, we're not out to make a huge profit as a government entity, but we do want to stay a little bit above and have a kind of a cleaner glide path to keep our reserves up in case of issues. Things come up, expenses come up. And you'll see inter-fund transfers in and out. So the $3.9 million is actually being transferred out to the capital project fund, and then interfund transfers out also goes to the project fund as well as to the library and to the market for support. Going down to the capital projects fund, the revenues are generally from any types of grants that come in. One of the things that will be happening in 24 and 25 is we'll be getting proceeds from building renovation. We'll be borrowing $12 million over the next 2 years to pay for building renovations, since that's the general obligation bond proceeds that you see there. So that's one of the reasons that you see our reserves going up. Our consolidated reserves at 17.7 million go up to 19 and 20. It's because we've got that influx of cash, and also the prior benefit from the ARPA funds. But over time, you see that our reserves go down. So if you took it out of the ARPA funds you took out the proceeds, we're definitely in a declining mode with our reserves, which is not a good thing. Up at the top on the right-hand side, I show a 3-month reserve. As you can see, the operating fund reserve, I want 3 months of reserve to pay for expenses. That's the bottom. So we hit the bottom reserve in 2028. You need to take into consideration some fee increases, otherwise we'll end up going below that threshold. You can go to the next slide. These funds I just put up there, the other governmental funds. One's the library fund. The yellow line you'll see, that's the fund transfers in from the general fund. And you can see it's increasing over time. So by the time we get to 2028, we'll be supplementing the library out of the general fund by $686,000. And again, that's net of any other type of grants, donations, et cetera. One of the things that, and fair share that the borough and other municipalities are contributing. One of the things we may want to consider is the possibility of reaching out to HPLA to consider them to help us fill that gap in supporting the library. They do have an endowment fund. They do give the money out with the eyedropper. And again, it's really for the betterment of the library. And so it's something that we may want to consider reaching out for. The next one's the Market House. Again, is not much of a big story on the dollars, but again, you can see the yellow line. That's the support that comes from the general fund, and it increases over time. ARPA fund is basically, I'm showing this to show you it's the end of the road. We've used up all $7.3 million as of 23, and going forward, it doesn't exist. Okay, the next slide. Okay, the water fund. This is definitely one I want you to focus in on. The water fund is our biggest enterprise fund. You can see our revenues of $9 million is higher than any of the other enterprise funds. We're showing it pretty flat. We did have a rate increase from the PUC rate study that went into effect for outside the borough. But again, we haven't had any changes on fees inside the borough for over 10 years. Typically, the water fund has about a $3 million operating profit, meaning the revenue versus the normal operating expenses, about a $3 million operating profit. As you go down into the capital projects fund, you'll see where it says debt burden there on the side. That $1.924 million, almost $2 million out of your $3 million profit leaves you not much for other types of projects. You have $1 million. So that's one of the things I just wanted to point out tonight to emphasize the importance of when we make big investments, such as the infrastructure for the PUC rate increase that we had, which I think was a $13 million borrowing, and then the Shepherd Myers Dam, $10 million borrowings, both necessary, but have long-term effects. So we'll be paying the $2 million in debt through 2038 for the water fund. Again, also, it's a small thing, but if we do save up for capital equipment and the large vehicles and things like that, as opposed to financing them, $83,000 here, $50,000 here, every penny counts, and we should always be thinking about how we can save the borough money whenever possible. Again, going to the bottom line, we see the consolidated cash and investments. Right now, I'm projecting, without the $1.5 million loan from the general fund, we'll basically run out of money for the water fund at the end of this year. The reserves will be depleted. We'll run over $85,000. I've seen some additional bills that have come in recently, and it's probably going to be worse than that. So that's an issue. We need to
Paid all of the Shepherd Myers Dam renovation bills?
We just actually paid the last large one was $696,000. I think we still have the change order, which was 89, and that might be changing again, I think down to 44.
So the deficit of 86,000 at the end of the year includes all that?
So far. If there's anything else that comes up.
All right, thank you.
I think we just got another one for EK Services for the pipe work, sewer and water pipe work, $154,000. That just hit my desk, or actually was in the packet today. Hasn't hit the AP desk, so that's another $154,000 against the $85,000. So it's not a good story for 2023. But again, between the PUC, the dam, and also the meter project, which we did tail off, but we did take on a lot of inventory and a lot of initial costs there at the beginning. It put a big dent in the water fund's reserves. So again, we need to build those up over time. And you see the bottom line, that consolidated reserves. The plan right now is to increase those reserves, and by 2028, with the current level of spend, I think that's where we're going to land. Again, we're keeping $1.5 million in the operating fund reserve, and by 28 and another 4.1 will be up over $5 million of reserve by 2028. But we're definitely making a lot of concessions. If you look in the capital projects fund under the capital outlay, you can see we have $5.1 million of capital outlay along with our debt service. So that's a $7.1 million expense in 2023 for the water fund. Go over to 2024 and beyond, you see the expenses go down 2.8 and further down. So we're trying to trend that down. We did make a lot of concessions beginning next year to ensure we can change that trend. But it puts us in a situation where if we're not pushing the top line on the revenue, it puts us in a really difficult spot to do some of these projects that are very important to the water department.
So I can't not ask this question. Is this including the meter program?
That includes the spend so far for the meter program, and I took out $600,000 from the budget for next year to
Because
ensure.
that was being budgeted in. That was part of the whole PUC case too, was the meter program. So I'm assuming the
We met the spend for the PU. I'm talking about additional work for whether we outsource or inventory for 2024. We met the PUC spend. We're done. That $13 million, Eric?
Yeah, I'll clarify that for you on Tuesday, Chuck.
Okay.
Okay.
There's some details to that that are beyond what
So,
okay.
in any event, so that's the water fund. Let's go to the next slide. So the sewer fund's a little bit better story, but again, in a situation where we want to watch our costs. The $750,000 first yellow line is the minimum operating reserve I want to keep of 3 months' worth of expenses. The bottom line, the consolidated ending cash and investments, you can see the trend is down. 23, we're going to end up at $4.4 million, and we'll be down at this point to $2.5 million by 2028. Definitely not a trend we want to consider. So the capital spend, the capital outlay is fairly low for this year. We bump up to $607,000, but again, we keep it flat then going forward. The debt service, again, something that we'll be living with for many years in the future, is running kind of flat, or close to about $1.8 million. It's something that's always there until we get through it in, I said 2038 or something like that, when we run out of.
Yeah, but
the
inevitably,
debt.
we're always chasing that. There'll be something more we add on before
True,
that.
but it
That's-
just, it just compiles. In other words,
We need to learn how to get ahead of that.
well, it's just that you really, when we make those decisions for the big projects, thinking about it on a long-term basis. I mean, I'm showing you 5 years now, but really we should be planning for 5, 10 years down the road.
Without
Because
a
a
doubt.
lot of the things that we do, the big projects we have, are for a long time. The Shepherd Myers Dam improvements, how long will it be good for? 50 years or whatever.
yeah.
So these are important things to be done, but
It's an asset.
just thinking through it before we pile on the debt year after year, all of a sudden you're in a situation where you go, why are we cash poor? Well, we can't turn the key and just have money show
We
up.
need to get our incomes ahead of our expenses, is the gist of it.
Are there considerations with these numbers of
Well, there's
all
other-
the,
and other
new
things, too.
customers
Yeah.
for water and sewer coming?
Well, because I don't have that information.
Sure.
Yeah, if again, more forethought and looking down the road. So if we do have information for new customers, new developments, my understanding for the most part, I think Eric had mentioned there's 2 or 3 different developments that are, but I haven't got any information to estimate
And we don't know what their usage.
what the revenues would be, but of course, there's also costs associated with that as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, chasing growth is temporary,
Yeah.
because then the costs catch up with you later.
And it
So-
doesn't help you right now.
It doesn't help you.
Right.
Especially in the next 5 years.
You're better to have a plan under stability.
So again, the sewer fund, a little bit better story, but again, a declining reserves over time. And again, I think we should consider looking at our sewer rates inside the borough. All right, next slide. Regional wastewater, this is pretty much a pretty benign story there because it's really supported by the municipalities. Pretty flat on the revenues, but you can see our reserves are pretty steady at about a little under $1 million a year. So that's really not a big issue as far as I'm concerned. So we can go to the next slide.
So the sewer fund is the pipes,
Right. Right.
but the water plant, the sewer plant is fairly stable.
Right.
Okay, interesting.
Stormwater Authority, again, it's a pretty good story. Pretty easy to keep the amount of reserves for the operating, and you can see the actually consolidated reserves actually are trending up, not at a high rate, but fairly safe. It's not any big issues there. Their capital outlay is pretty low in comparison, and they don't have any really long-term debt.
It's not spending it on projects.
Right, exactly. Next slide, please. Liquid fuels, probably the least worry, support from the state for what AJ's got to do with Public Works and taking care of the road, so I don't think there's any issues there at all. And I think that's the last slide. And that's it. So again, this is just a preview for September 26th. We look forward to speaking with you in detail at that meeting.
It'll be good.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
The next item on there is 4B, the SPCA agreement. Margie, you want to comment to that, or who?
This is just our annual service contract. The amount's $11,698.
It did go up by almost 4,000.
Yeah, it has increased.
They have warned us about that and sent us letters in August.
Yeah.
They do provide a significant amount of services for the cost.
Can I ask a question about that? What do we give them money for? I don't get it. I mean, I'm just new to that. What is that?
So, go ahead, Dory.
It's,
Go
it's
ahead.
in the packet, really. It explains it all in there.
They handle we keep dogs for a couple of days to see if somebody comes. Am I speaking correctly, Chad? We keep the dogs for a few days to see if an owner turns up and gets them. But after that, they go to the SPCA. The SPCA also takes in feral cats. They don't come and trap them, but we trap them if a resident traps them. Yep.
It's called trap, neuter, and release.
Yep. TNR. Yep.
The other thing, they offer low-cost spaying and neutering if you're a resident of York County. Also, if you were going to turn an animal in, you have to live in York County to turn them in. They also offer low-cost shots, keeping up with their annual shots and all that.
Right.
Okay.
I so motion.
All right. Motion a second.
A second.
Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any motion carries, thank you. Water Resources, 6A.
Public safety.
Public safety.
Oh, pardon me,
skipped over.
I'm sorry, I skipped one. Public Safety, revision of the park rules. I was on the,
This was something that we went over in public safety in a review of our park rules signs, which are posted at every park. There's a rule in there that contradicts what we have as our burn ordinance in the borough. So we were just asking to eliminate one of the rules that refers to open burning in the parks with permission. So Secretary Felix will do a wonderful job writing that up for the advertisements to approve the ordinance.
okay.
Make that motion?
A motion and a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. AJ, West Hanover Street School Zone?
So the school district had asked us, and this had been before the council already, to install a school zone in front of Hanover Street Elementary School on Hanover Street between York and Baltimore Street. There's a process where our police department did a wonderful job with some of the traffic study involved and required by PennDOT. We then filled out the proper paperwork, sent the application in to PennDOT, and we have been approved. The school district has given us a verbal okay to split the bill with them. So the total bill for the materials for that project to install the school flashers that are connected to the electric on Hanover Street will be a total of $8,500. So the share would be $4,250 each.
Does that include labor?
No, it does not.
It doesn't.
No.
Do we know what that would run?
So the labor there would be minimal, but we work together closely with the school district, and we oftentimes work together on projects. So it's a give and take with them all together. So this is just, we are just asking for a material share here.
Thank you. Okay. I so motion.
Second. Any further discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, AJ. All right, now we're at the water resources.
Before Eric gets started with this, just so you all know, Gary was not at the water sewer meeting, and Tim and Bill are not here. So with that said, I will have Eric start out with a synopsis of that meeting for everyone's benefit, if you would, please.
Yeah, and if we can do it item by item, I think that might make sense versus kind of an overall one. So we'll go ahead and start with the Shepherd Myers project closeout. This has been a conversation going back to, I believe, as far back as April, actually. The gist of it is that the contractor had made a request for some additional compensation. You guys have sort of been kicking that around. Ultimately, it landed in front of Water and Sewer. Water and Sewer's opinion and recommendation on it was that they saw value to the 2 valves being included, but nothing else. So the sand, the diesel fuel, and the concrete would all fall away. And so their recommendation was that the change order only be approved in the amount of $44,191.72, which is just the 2 valves, the gate valve and the sluice gate valve.
Right. I was there.
That's right.
I was,
right.
yeah.
So we need a motion to approve that? Is that where we are?
You would need a motion to approve the change order as well as to execute an agreement that your solicitor has put together that basically resolves the matter and protects the borough's interests.
Okay, so
So
can we
I
get a
will
motion?
motion. I will motion for
Yep.
that.
Marie, and a second, please? All right, Barb? Any further discussion? All right, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go.
Okay.
Item B, keep it on a roll.
Eagle Rock Development is again another of our golden oldies here. Eagle Rock was a development that came in front of you back in April. It was requesting for approval to extend the borough's water system. And so that has been part of a very heated and back and forth conversation with council about their ability and willingness to do that. Water and Sewer came to the recommendation that as long as we were moving forward with the safe yield studies and the other documents, that at this point in time they believe that moving forward with Eagle Rock was the appropriate recommendation.
They're covering most of that expense, the owners?
All of that expense.
Okay, there's nothing that we're covering. I know it was a
Water service
tight,
agreement
I know it was
specifically
a
holds
tight
them
agreement
responsible.
contract.
And it
yeah.
adds to our capital plan,
It does. It builds your capital assets, yes.
correct? So can we have a motion for item 6B?
One quick thing, just to answer the public comment question that was raised about the next item we'll talk about, but the conversation was, what happens if you move forward with Eagle Rock and then you also move forward with a safe yield study? Should there be a moratorium? I think, and certainly I don't want to speak for the solicitor, there are some legal logistics that would occur as far as a moratorium, but I can assure you that taking Eagle Rock into account would be part of the safe yield study if it were to be moved forward. We would put that count into the model as we look at the overall process, as well as any others that would come in. Again, with that being a process that stretches over 6 to 8 months, anything that would come in that time would be fed directly to the consultant so that it could be accounted for.
Okay. So then, item 6B, the Eagle Rock development, we need a motion for approval, please.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Then a vote. Those in favor? signify aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. So it's Councilman Funk against?
Yes,
with
I
our-
am. Yes,
there
until we
any-
have the analysis, I don't feel we should go any further and that there should be a moratorium at this point. But that's 1 out of 10 vote.
Right? So that's, I think actually it's 1 out of 8.
Oh, is it 1 out of 8? Oh, we're
Missing this
missing
evening.
one?
We're missing
No,
2.
2.
Bill and
Okay.
Tim.
All right, 1 out of
Okay,
8.
so motion carries. Thank you. All right, item C, the safe yield study / drought contingency plan. Would
So
you care
this
to
sort of, this
comment?
is a new item, and this kind of evolved out of the conversations that council was having at multiple levels, but most recently at your water sewer level. And it came out of a realization that this borough certainly has a desire in wanting to be more prudent with your water supply and your sources and making sure that you're taking care of them. And so as part of that, we've never really undertaken a safe yield study. And what a safe yield study is it's really a very, very comprehensive and technical look at your water supply system. And it looks at what its demands are on it. It looks at how quickly do your reservoirs replenish themselves. It looks at rainfall data. It looks like all sorts of things. And it combines them together to give you some idea of what is that sort of proverbial line in the sand of where when you reach it, it's not to say that you stop, but you should definitely be having conversations about how much further can you sustain more growth without potentially needing more investments in your systems. You know, it could become something where you might reach some line in the sand, but then the borough may say, okay, well, we're going to do a second Clear Lake, or we're going to develop a second supply well, or we're going to more formally use Slagle Run in some way, and you could end up seeing that line slide some. So I want you to keep in mind that as we would get to some point with this, it is not a static line that for here forward ever and ever and ever, that's your line. It's going to change. It's going to change as you make investments into your assets and your infrastructure. So this study, as was mentioned before, is not something that happens on a weekend. It takes many months. It takes a team of hydrogeologists looking at things, looking at all that stuff together, and building computer models that ultimately get us to where we want to go. One of the things that I asked of the Sewer and Water Committee is if you go that route, I asked that you also add a drought contingency plan. We do operate off of a drought contingency plan now. We basically look at our capacity, we look at our usage, and we have a sort of graph that we follow. And when we get below a certain line on that graph is when we begin to have conversations about water restrictions, be they voluntary or mandatory. We're certainly not at that point right now, but the conversation is, I would like a better tool. I would like a better, more comprehensive tool that melds into what you're going to do with the safe yield study so that I can better advise you as to when we get to those points.
So you're actually getting a model built? So
Yes.
any new developments could be automatically put into
Correct.
that model?
Yeah, now, and I want to warn you though, we do already have a model. We have, because Water Gems is the name of the model.
Right.
We do put our developments in, but I thought it was a good point made at Water and Sewer is that's really focused on capacity inside the pipes.
Right.
It's looking at pressures and volumes and things like that. It's not looking out here at your supplies that feed into that system. So having the two tools work together is really where I want you guys to be.
So how is this study going to make any recommendations on conservation and/or changes to ordinance requiring conservation?
So what would happen is when you get to the end of this study, you will ultimately kind of have a much better sense of what is that, again, that safe yield. What is it that you can draw from your water systems but not damage your water systems? And then you can look at your policies and say, okay, what ordinances, what regulations might I want to change that support that? Because right now, we don't have that, so we don't operate from that. We operate off of, again, the drought plan that's currently running. We use that tool. We certainly look to DEP to help guide us as far as conditions overall. We look to USGS. I mean, we have a number of partners that come into play, but this would give us a sort of control of our own destiny a little bit, and we'd have to look at our policies. I would suggest to you that we might even go back and look at land use policies and some other things.
Right.
The difficult part is I can't look at land use policies outside of the borough. And unfortunately right now where your system is growing it's growing outside of the borough. But we can share the information with the outside municipalities to say, look, here's our line in the sand. It's based on this build out. Please help support that. You know, it's in your best interest too.
As part of
That's
this
how it
model,
works.
can they model conservation practices in place? Because if the outside community is, outside the borough is growing, then that's where we need to tighten up on conservation.
I can't answer definitively. I would think that you could, but yeah, I'd need to talk to Gannett specifically. to
Well,
see if that's
today, we
there.
think the answer's 10 million gallons a day. That's the number we have in front of us.
You're permitted by DEP to provide 10 million gallons per day.
We currently consume between 4 and 5.
About 4.7 to 4.8 is typically, and it's been
Okay.
trending down.
So it's the 10 that we need to substantiate is the task here at hand.
This is the weird point of these things is you have that line by DEP, you're looking to develop some intermediate line before you get to that point.
Correct.
And you certainly, you always want to be cognizant, you don't want to paint yourself in a corner and say, oh, hey, our safe yield is 5, I'm not doing anything else, let's shut everything down, because that's not healthy for the overall system that you've already built, the investments that you've made into
Well,
Shepherd
and that
Myers
adds,
and other
Jim
things.
just went through the presentation that, adding new customers adds to the revenue growth that we need. So the question is, how do we add these new customers safely, which is what I would assume this is
That's
going
what
to
this will
yield.
ultimately get you closer to answering.
And what is this going to cost?
The safe yield study is about 50,000 and the drought study is about 20. So your combined is about 70.
70,000.
Is that money in the budget?
Well, I have been saving you on your professional services through the year, which was one of the
That's
things
true.
I was all proud of. So I have capacity in my professional services budget to accommodate this, but it was not a planned thing that I had planned to undertake. So.
In '23?
Yeah. I have been, since my time coming here, slowly trying to wean you guys off of third-party engineering services where it makes sense to. And there are certain technical things that I can't begin to address for you, but I have begun to do more reviews and coordinations, and especially with staff and things, so that we're not always picking up the phone and calling our engineering partners, because every time you do, it costs you money. We had been doing really, really good with that. This is gonna kick us in the teeth a little bit, but we're still within our budget, so it's just going to end up at the budget for the year is
Harry,
what's going to happen.
on this $70,000 study, it will also will help us greatly in the outside of the Hanover Borough. In other words, it's going to give us more input on
You're going
those
to
that are
look at
getting water.
You're going to look at your system almost absent municipal boundaries. You're going to look at it like it functions in nature. What's coming in, what's going out.
For
You're
the
going to kind
entire-
of turn a blind eye to, well, that's Penn and that's McSherrystown. We're not, the model's not going to differentiate that.
gallons in
It's
and
just
gallons
looking
out.
at,
Going to look at the overall.
yes, correct.
Okay.
Eric, I apologize for missing that meeting last week.
It was a good one.
What did they determine, how did they look at this study? What
They
was your opinion
recommended
of
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it came that they wanted to see this council engage in a study that looked at safe yield, and they seem willing to entertain my idea of adding drought contingency to it as well.
Okay. So can we get a motion to move forward with that?
How long is that study good for? A while?
It's good for some period of time. I mean, obviously, as land use patterns would change inside the watershed, we need to be a little bit careful of what that's doing. They will build a fair amount of what we will call natural growth into it probably. They'll project out a few years, they'll project impervious coverage increasing and things like that. But it should be not necessarily just put on a shelf. It should be something that every couple years we maybe dust off and look at.
Like update?
Well, that's a good point, Barb, but what is the study period?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask also,
What's the lifetime of it?
Yeah, is this a 50-year look, or is this
Oh, for how far out are they going to
how
look?
far out? And number two is, are they going to model for climatic weather shifts? It's gonna
Second
get-
part of
it's-
your
it's
answer,
gonna
yes.
get-
The first part, I'm not sure the exact time frame. I feel like when I looked at the proposal, there was a 10-year window in there, but I will look at the proposal to see for sure how far out they're going.
Because I
I
think,
don't think it's short. I think it's no less than 10. It may go out even further than that.
because I think Pennsylvania is about to change their rainfall models.
I've been talking about that for years, but yeah, they've been looking at newer data sources and changing some of that and the rainfall, the IDF curves and some of that.
Correct.
NOAA
So do we
Atlas
wanna-
14.
Atlas 14, yeah.
Do we want to make a motion to move forward on that?
So
at this point?
motion. I will
Sec-
so motion.
Mrs. Funk, a second?
Yes.
Chuck? Okay, any other discussion? Okay, those in favor, state aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Eric?
Thank you, Eric.
Where do we stand at this point with the Shepherd Myers Dam being refilled? I'm just-
So,
It's gotta rain.
yeah, Shepherd Myers, the valves, so the valves are closed so that we can begin refilling. They are only open enough right now for us to meet our minimum low flow release. So at times after we get rain, we are seeing it build up on the valves as far as the height. And then when we get through a period of dry, it starts to go down a little bit. Obviously, what we need is sort of a sequence of a number of rain events that kind of first saturate things so that everything that's rainfall runs off, because that's when you'll really start to see the streams come up, and that's where we'll see the base flow come in and start to really build that level
Get
up.
some this weekend.
But yeah, it is in process right now. We are working through it, but we are at the mercy of others beyond me at this point.
Well, it looks like this weekend it's gonna rain.
I would love to see that sit right over Shepherd Myers. The one thing I was talking to Councilwoman Funk about is the watershed for Shepherd Myers is extremely high, meaning for every 1 square foot of area of reservoir, the square foot that contributes to it is really high. It might be almost as high as 80-1. So that's good, because what that means is when you get rainfall, then you have a much higher chance of getting a lot of rainfall in there. It's one of our faster filling reservoirs. LBS is a little bit slower. I think that number's around 1 in 30 or something like that.
So that was a big
takes
part of the
little bit.
justification of redoing that,
Yes.
Correct.
Yep,
Yeah.
was the rapid recharge of it.
absolutely, yeah.
And Eric, you did feel that we should have a fullness of the dam by, you're estimating if we get good precip,
Yeah,
right?
I think by mid to late spring, you'll see impounded water in there again. If we get good snow, that's the other nice thing, is you get a good snowpack that melts, it really piles up pretty quickly. But right now, unfortunately, we're getting as much rain as we're letting out, and that's why you're not seeing it come up as quickly as we want, is we're meeting our low flow requirements, but we're not getting the ability to kind of get in front of it. So we'll get there slowly, but it's just,
All right.
gotta wait.
Let's move to item 7. Eric, thank you very much. Public Works and Facilities. AJ, item A, we have a resolution for funding through the LSA Category 4 grant program.
So, item A, we're asking council to support basically an application for some grant funding. The LSA stands for the Local Share Account, which is the casino money from the state that is then put into this account. So everyone has the ability to put in for this. At this time, we are looking to purchase 4 vehicles through there. And as for reimbursement, this is total reimbursement through this grant program, so there is no match here. It's a very long, drawn-out process. It may not come to fruition in 2024, but possibly 2025. But it is time-sensitive for the application, so we're asking for that approval.
Okay? The motion to approve
I'm
that?
going to motion that. I'm
All right,
in
Mrs.
agreement
Funk,
with
in a
that
second?
thoroughly.
Seconded.
Okay, whoever, Brian or Barb. Any other discussion? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries, thank you. Item 7B, resolution for funding to the Keystone Recreation Park and Conservation Fund grants. AJ?
So item B is a caveat there specifically for public libraries. We are looking at replacing the mechanicals over at Guthrie Memorial Library. They are coming to the end of their lifespan. This is another one that is time sensitive for us to get this information in, but also may be a drawn-out process. This one isn't quite as friendly. This one is a 50-50 match. So if it were up to the $500,000, the borough would be responsible to either pay in or find some other grant funding for the other $250,000. This does not bind you to anything. This is just for us to get this in and then, hopefully have some good results. We've had very good results with buying vehicles and some other things through DEP grant funding in the last several years to the tune of, several $1 million. So again, time sensitive to get this in, but we are not bound to the agreement.
We're not bound to what?
We're not bound to make the purchase then.
Wire.
We're not, we don't even know if we'll be approved for the purchase.
So you're looking for approval to proceed?
Correct.
Do we have to match the funding?
You would for this grant.
for this one, we
Correct.
definitely would. I definitely
But this
want
would
to
be a
know.
recurring cost savings in energy.
So otherwise, what we're looking at is most likely an emergency repair where the borough would have to take on the entire cost without any grant funding. So it would be nice to have this working and going and possibly in our back pocket by the time we get to that point.
Okay,
make a motion to
we
approve.
can use this grant for more than one thing?
This is specifically for HVAC equipment at the library. The air conditioning units and the boilers, all of which are original and nearing the end of their lifespan.
Okay, so could we have a motion to move forward with item 7B, please? Barb?
Yes, I did make a
Thank you. And a
motion.
second?
Second.
Chuck? Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Yeah, I agree.
Who was opposed?
I'm opposed
I
to.
am opposed. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that brings us 5-3, right? All right,
5 to 2. 6 to 2. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Six, no. There were
6
three.
to 3.
Three
Right,
of us.
6, or
3 to
5 to
5.
3,
So there's 3 people opposed?
Correct.
Who was
yes.
the third? Mrs. Greenholdt, Mrs. Funk?
And Gary.
Gary.
Gary, okay, sorry.
Right.
Okay, item 8, reports of council members, council committees, and other public bodies. We have the committee chair reports under that, too. Do we have
I have
any?
nothing to report.
Nothing? Chuck, enhancement,
October 11th, 6 o'clock. Be there
okay?
to see the presentation on the streetscape.
Water and Sewer Committee, can anyone comment for Bill?
No.
Eric can.
Eric, do you have anything to
Yeah, the
add?
report I gave you pretty much is where they're at with things.
Okay. Public Works and Facilities, Mr. Kress, who's not here. Chuck, can you add anything to what we've already discussed?
No.
All right. Governance and Policy,
Nothing- I have
Dr.
nothing
Rupp,
to
you're going to
report
have
right
to
now.
fill
No.
in for everybody else on that one.
No.
Okay. And last is the Council or Fire Commission. Does anyone have anything to add as Fire Chief here?
We
No.
meet tomorrow. Fire Commission meets
Okay, they're
tomorrow.
meeting tomorrow?
That's why he always gets out of this, because they always meet the day
And the
after.
timing is,
Yeah.
his timing
The
is
timing's
perfect, you got to
perfect.
admit.
None of the information's relevant anymore.
Right.
Right.
We did get their
Management
budget,
reports?
By the way, we did get Fire Commission's budget, so you'll see
Oh, good,
that.
thank you.
Where are we on the report, the study report?
Where are we on the study report? We met, the committee met last Thursday evening, the council committee of the Fire Commission. And where we are is setting up an appointment with Penn to speak with their Fire Commission members of their board and their manager to discuss some of the things. It's going to come to you folks as well. So we're going to meet with them first, trying to go with the same messaging. Hopefully we can.
Great, good, thank you. Any management reports that we haven't already covered?
Nothing further.
Any correspondence and information to add? That wasn't in the package, or,
Nothing additional.
all right? Any additional public comment? Very good point. Just as a reminder, we have a budget workshop meeting Tuesday, September 26th at 9 a.m. to 3 at the library in the Hormel Reading Room, which is the old library room. No additional public comment, either in person or digitally.
Historic library. Go in, main library to the left.
It's upstairs.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
No motion.
So motioned, so we're adjourned at 8:03.